Hi, hello. This is the part 2 of the basic concepts of economy. Today we will be seeing the next topic, inflation. We will be seeing what is inflation, what are the concepts of inflation, and how it is calculated, how it can be controlled. Now let me share the screen, which I made a small presentation about the inflation. Okay. Now we will see what is inflation. Inflation means general price rise in the product commodities and the services over the period of time is called inflation. Now let's see, like, if there is increase in price of any one item or two item or very few item, then we call it as inflation. No, like all the essential items or the important essential items, if there is increase in the price over the period of time, then we call it as the inflation. Now we will see what are the causes of inflation. There are two causes, we can say demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. When there is increase in money in the market. Okay, how the money increase in the market, like when there is increase in the income of the people, or when there is more subsidies given to the people, when the loan is more accessible to the people, then the money in the market will increase. When the money increase in the market, obviously the purchasing power will increase. When the purchasing power increase, then price will rise. Then we call it this term as the inflation. This is called demand pull inflation. When there is increase in the money and it leads to price rate, we call it as a demand pull inflation. We can say, like, if the government employees salaries alone it's increased, whereas the private companies they still have the same old price or same old wages, and we have so many informal sectors, it means what it will happen, like the essential prices due to the demand, because people will be buying more items, and so the demand will increase and this will lead to the price increase, and this price increase we call it as the demand pull inflation. Now we will go to the next topic, that is cost push inflation. When there is increase in raw material price, then this leads to also inflation. That inflation is called cost push inflation. Let me take one example. For example, if the oil price increases, if the oil price increases, obviously the raw material cost, because of the transport charges. Why the transport charges? Because of the fuel charges high, then obviously the raw material transport charges will increase. Then it increases means obviously the production will get increase, and this led to the inflation. That inflation we call them as a cost push inflation. Now we will see, like, whether the inflation is good or bad. For example, if the inflation is 4%, that if the price rises by 4%, then it is good for the economic growth, because when the price of the product increases, obviously it will increase the GDP. So when the GDP is increases, it means the national income increases. For example, if it is more than 4%, what it will happen? When it is more than 4%, low income people will suffer. Then obviously government need to involve in that one to reduce the price, and this is bad for the economy. So the inflation at 4% is good for the economy, whereas the inflation more than 4% will affect the low income people, and government need to interfere and need to take actions, and RBI need to change the monetary policy to keep the percentage like 4 percentage, like that, it will be good for the economy. Now we will see about the concept deflation. What is deflation? Deflation is the opposite of inflation. That is decrease in price. When there is a decrease in price, what it will happen? It will lead to recession. Sorry, it will lead to recession. Okay, and then we will see one more topic called monetary policy. Let me wipe this one. Let me use this to explain the concept of monetary policy, how the monetary policy will work out. For example, I said if money in the market, money increases, what it will do? Demand will increase. When the demand increase, what will happen? It will lead to rise in price. Okay, how this money will be increased? For example, I'm saying if the interest rate is very low, then obviously what people will do? They are accessible to more loan. So if the loan is more, then obviously people will get more loans, and then there will be more money in the market, and it will lead to demand, and the demand will lead to price rise. Okay, and then now we will see if the interest rate it's very high, then there will be less money in the market. Obviously there will not be inflation, but if there is no money in the market, then it will lead to deflation. So this interest rate, who is controlling this one? RBI through MPC, that is Monetary Policy Committee. So they will decide upon the interest rate in which the bank need to give the loan, and then this will lead to the money in the market. It will lead to the inflation. Okay, now you have understood, I think. Next we will go to the concept how inflation is calculated. What is WPI? WPI means wholesale price index. CPI means consumer price index. And we will see the concept called inflation rate. Do you know what is inflation rate? Like how we have seen the GDP rate, like comparison with the previous year, inflation rate is also same, increase in percentage of price increase of commodity compared to previous year, that's called inflation rate. For example, WPI. WPI means wholesale price index. What it will do is like the wholesale market, it will have some price, whereas the consumer price, it's the something different. For example, the traders, they will have the bulk quantity and they will have some reduction in the price, whereas the individual as a consumer, when we buy the single piece quantity will be at the different price. So there will be a two concept, WPI and CPI. Before, RBI was using this WPI concept to calculate the inflation rate. Now after 2014, RBI is also using the CPI value to control the monetary policy. So the WPI and CPI is for what items? These items are only for the essential items that government will be involved in to fix the values. So these wholesale price values will be calculated by the NSSO, and they will be released on the monthly basis, and they will release based on this release the inflation along with the inflation rate. They will also be releasing this WPI and CPI, and it will be in the headline also. So we have the two price rate, WPI and CPI. So as the name literally says, it's a wholesale price and the consumer price. So which one is good? For example, this wholesale price, if there is a decrease in the wholesale price, it will not decrease the same in the CPI. For example, if we are buying 300 shirts, that's the whole price rate. When there is a decrease in the price, do you think the trader will decrease the selling price also? No, he will have earn his own margin, so there won't be any decrease in the CPI consumer price. So this WPI increase or decrease does not have any impact on the consumer price. So this is not a true picture value. So CPI is the true picture value, and it gives the retail market and it gives the clear picture of the value. And whereas the WPI, it does not include the service activities because only the product can be consumed at the wholesale price, that is the bulk quantity, whereas CPI, it includes both the commodities and the services. Okay, and then now we will see the different types of CPI. CPI rural, CPI urban, CPI industrial worker, because in the industrial area, depending upon the Ministry of Labor and Commerce, the rates are different because the essential items in the industrial area, it is different value, whereas when we see the urban, it will be different, and rural, it will be different. Because for example, if we take one vegetable like a brinjal, the rate in all these area, it will be differ, and these values are fixed by the commercial markets. So these values have different base values, and these are calculated as a CPI value, and it will be projected monthly basis by the NSSO. Now we need to understand the concept of inflation and deflation. Like we said, inflation, when there is more production, it will give more employment. When there is more employment, also people will have money and they will also buy more, then there will be more demand. When there is a more demand, again the cycle will go to that, production will increase and more employment, so this is good. So the inflation at 4% will be like this, whereas the deflation means it will decrease the production, there will be less employment and there will be less demand. Obviously then the production will be less. When this cycle continues, it will lead to recession. Okay, next topic is types of inflation. On the basis of the rate of increase, there are different types, that is crawling, walking, running, galloping and hyper. Crawling means when the inflation rate is increased by 2%, it is crawling. Walking we can say 3%, and then running we can say 4%. So until this one, it is good. Running means it's good for the economic growth. Crawling means we know the economy is at least improving. Walking means we know that the economy is trying to grow. When it is running at 4%, it means there is an actual economic growth. Galloping means keeping a higher step, like horse will gallop, right? So there will be increase in 6%. When there is more than 10%, it is hyper. And what we said is, if there is a hyper, it means the low income people will suffer more, and then poverty will increase in the country. And the next is the basis of sector. There are different types of inflation. Headline inflation. Headline inflation, we already said it, that WPI and the CPI value, it is all given in the headline, and this one is the important for the people because majority of the people are depending upon the essential items for the living conditions. So all the essential items are covered in the WPI and the CPI, and also we studied like CPI is more important and it gives the true picture value, and RBI is also using CPI value in order to regulate the monetary policy. Then comes what is core inflation. Do you know the eight core sectors of our economy? We can easily memorize it as core, it will start as C, right? So we can say it is coal, crude, cement, then comes natural gas, then petroleum, refinery product. We will have fertilizer. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we have what I said, coal, crude, cement, natural gas, petroleum and refinery product, then fertilizer, then we have electricity. Okay, when there is sudden increase in the core sectors, it will affect majorly all the other essential items. How it will affect, for example, crude oil. If there is increase in the crude oil price, like I said before, there will be increase in the transportation cost. Obviously the essential good will increase. So this is the indirect thing, whereas the WPS and CPI, it also talks about directly the essential items. So this is based on the sector. It is divided into headline inflation and core inflation. And then if there is increase in the core inflation, it is also bad. But if there is increase in the CPI, it means it is more dangerous, and we need to look upon that one. Stagflation, it is the stagnant inflation. Like whenever there is the jobless growth, then we call it as, that is when there is a no employment, we call it as a stagnant inflation. And then in 2010, I think there was a jobless growth. Do you know why? Because like in 2000 to 2010, the IT industries was booming, and only very less number of people were involved, and they were getting a huge money. So when the salary is increased, what we said, then there will be a demand pull inflation. What it will happen, it will lead to increase in price. Obviously then there is a inflation. That's why sometimes we call the stagnant, that when there is employment opportunities doesn't increase, but there is increase in price and the inflation happens, then we call it as the stagflation. Okay, and then we have already studied about deflation. What we study is deflation means it is a negative of inflation. When there is decrease in the price of the commodities and services, then we call it as the deflation. Then what is disinflation? Disinflation means when there is a change in the a rate of level of inflation. Okay, then we call it as the disinflation. And these inflation values, it's all depend upon the base year concept also. Like when the base year is changed, for example, I said in 2000, now we are currently using 2011. Now already the committee are recommending like we need to go for the 2015 price. How they will select the base year? They will select the base year when there is the data information, sufficient data information, and it is consistent. Like the price is not so high and not so less, when it is consistent, and when it is also comparable, then we will take it as that base year. When they change this price to here, then there will be a sudden increase in price. That increase in price is also affecting this inflation. And this inflation, when it is 4%, then the economic growth is good. And when the economic growth 4% is good, it's obviously going to increase the economy of the country, that is GDP of the country. And then the last topic is how inflation is controlled. Like I told you, demand pull inflation, monetary policy. Like I said, if there is interest rate controlled by the RBI is increase or decrease, then obviously money in the market will increase or decrease. Then obviously price will get stabilized by the RBI. And this increase in money concept, we call it as the demand pull inflation. And cost push inflation is the core sector or the raw material price rise. How the raw material price will rise? because by two terms, one by internal factors, another one is the external factors. Internal factors is like tax. When there is increase in tax, who is giving the tax? These taxes are comes under the fiscal policy, under the budget concept. So in the every budget they will release this percentage increase in gas, like GST is applicable, GST is not applicable, now it is reduced to 18 to 20 percentage, or it is decreased. All these are decided in the budget, and it is called the fiscal policy. Based on that internal factor, when there is increase in tax, means obviously there will be price rise. So this controlling factor is with the government. And then the external factor is the core sector. When there is increase in the price of the core sector, then obviously there will be increase in price and leads to inflation. So this has been controlled by both RBI and government. RBI controls or by the monetary policy, and government controls it through the fiscal policy. So this is it for the inflation. Thank you.